Okay, think green, natural, earth-friendly, conscious, planet-friendly. Even the word sustainable can be used as a greenwashing term. And the very simple reason why is because there's no legal definition of any of those words. And that can be quite the problem for those of us who want to do our best in terms of protecting the planet, or those of us who don't want to give money, who are doing not so great things too, or those of us who believe in the term vote with your dollar. And also those of us who want to hold corporations accountable when they're using terms that aren't regulated and they're allowed to just throw these things around willy-nilly. Well, that's quite a problem for me. I don't know. Let me know if that's a problem for you in the comments. Now, this video came about because of the recent ad that Kim Kardashian / Skims put out that then flooded my DMs with requests to talk about it, and we're gonna get to it. But I didn't want this video to just be me talking about that, because I think greenwashing is just becoming worse and worse, and I think we're finally starting to see some traction with our governments doing something about it. And I think aside from just the greenwashing that like me and you see when we're trying to make better choices in our everyday lives with the words that I talked about at the beginning, there's actually a lot more to greenwashing, and there's a lot more kind of dark, weird stuff going on, and there's a lot of different ways that greenwashing happens. It's not just using those words. So I thought we'd make this video more of a compilation about what greenwashing is, what's being done about it, what are the different ways it happens, which inevitably is going to help teach you how to look out for it, and then yes, we'll get to talking about making a joke of the climate crisis, which is just absolutely disgusting. But let's get into it. I've made several videos about greenwashing over the years. I'll link some below if I can remember. If not, if you search my channel for greenwashing, I'm sure it will come up. But I really want to drill something home, that greenwashing is not just one thing. It's actually can be so many different ways that companies try to pull the wool over your eyes, or just, what's the word? Misdirect you. They just want your money. They're just trying to say whatever they have to say to give them your money. That's what greenwashing is at the end of the day, at least in terms of like consumers or just average everyday people like me and you. It's undeniable that over the last 10 years with millennials and Gen Z, our purchasing power is a big deal, and we are the generations that care about holding corporations accountable, about protecting our planet, and so in order to get our money, they know they have to do a little something. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because there's actually a consulting firm called TerraChoice. They came up with these things a while ago. Somehow I had never heard this particular term, but it's the 6 sins of greenwashing, and I actually think it's the perfect way to explain what it is, why it's a problem, and how to look out for it. So I want to walk through them, give you some examples so that we can take that into the conversation about the inevitable ad that we all know we're gonna get a good rant. So let's first go through the 6 sins of greenwashing. This is them. The graphic, I think, came from Fashion of Business. I want to give them credit because this is nice. Okay, so we've got vagueness, lesser evils, irrelevance, hidden trade-offs, no proof, and fibbing. Let's go through some examples because, like I said, greenwashing is about more than just using words like planet friendly and shit like that. So the sin of hidden trade-offs, I see this a lot in greenwashing, and I actually think that the verbiage around EVs can be categorized under hidden trade-offs. I haven't heard a lot of people criticize this, but the fact that EVs are categorized as zero emissions vehicles sounds like it's greenwashing. In my opinion, that is greenwashing. And I'm not necessarily 100% anti-EV. I think they are going to have their place in our society because our society is built on cars. The marketing around EVs as zero emissions is a hidden trade-off because out of the car, there's zero emissions, okay? But those emissions are just elsewhere, right? Instead of the emissions coming from turning fossil fuels into energy, unless the car is using renewable energy, then the emissions are still being made just elsewhere to be turned into electricity and then put into the vehicle. I think using zero emissions to market EVs, I consider that greenwashing. I also think the sin of no proof and the sin of vagueness kind of go hand in hand. Like, I think they're essentially the same thing. And this is the part where we do see the typical greenwashing, like on supermarket shelves. I would categorize most of that under this. It's the vagueness of climate friendly, but no explanation of what that means, which is no proof, and you're being very vague. Also, when they use the term biodegradable without defining what that means, because it's not a regulated term, they've got no proof of how long it takes to biodegrade, and they're being very purposefully vague, not giving us all the information we need to make a decision. That's the most common form of greenwashing that we're probably familiar with on like a day-to-day basis. I think it should just make sense that if you make a claim, you have a QR code that takes you to a page that you can get the rest of the information, because I understand like it can't all be on your packaging, but you know, we live in 2023. It's easy enough to be able to make that information accessible, and a lot of brands just don't even bother doing that. This is also why I often preach the importance of third-party certifications, because if they can just then put like a label on there and you know that someone has verified that those claims they're making are true, they're not just saying them. I guess I would also put when brands spend so much time, energy, and money talking about their goals and not what they're actually doing under this category, because a lot of brands will set these like climate goals that sound good, look good, whatever, and they're spending so much time, energy, and money letting people know that they've like set these goals, but like you haven't done anything. Like why should we praise you for setting this goal? It's just some words that you said. And like, put your money where your mouth is, walk the walk instead of just talking the talk, and then come back to us in a few years when you actually have something to brag about. The sin of irrelevance greenwashing is an interesting one, and I've seen this a lot. It's when a brand puts something on a packaging to make themselves look like better than maybe like their competitors on the shelf next to them, but like that thing is already illegal via regulation, but putting that label on there when you see it from one and not the rest of them maybe makes you stand out. There's a lot of examples of this, of basically like BPA and mercury and lead, all these things that have been regulated, but people will still put them on products to make them seem different or more sustainable in some way than the rest of the ones on the shelf. I will also say that under the irrelevance category, there are so many labels that brands can put on their packaging that mean absolutely nothing. Like, there's no one to tell you that you can't put a cute little leaf symbol on your packaging that says like climate friendly. I'm working on starting my own brand. I know people hate when people talk about it. Okay, it's just when you've been working on something for years and it's taking this long to get to, you can't help but like bring it up every now and then. And I'm sure like once we're done, I will talk so in depth about the things I've learned about creating a sustainable business. I might leave a link to it in the description if you want to get a sneak peek of what we're working on. Through this process, I learned that basically you can put whatever symbols you want on your packaging. It doesn't matter what it means. There's no one to tell you you can't do it. And there's an endless amount of little icons that they just have ready to like stamp on your packaging. If you put like 10 different little green circular logos that look sustainable, that's greenwashing to me, because they don't mean anything at all. I would also put literal greenwashing here, like when they turn the packaging green and put nature-esque like looking images on their packaging to make themselves seem more sustainable. We also see this a lot in like oil and gas, them trying to make oil or fossil fuels seem somehow sustainable or better than other companies' alternatives and things like that. That's where you see this like type of lesser of two evils marketing, I think, in product categories that just like are bad, point blank period, for the environment itself. And then there's just downright lying. This definitely does happen, and I think this form of greenwashing, I think, has a better chance of being regulated or like action taken against it via false advertising. I did want to go through those sins with you because I think that it makes it a lot more tangible, because I think the term greenwashing can be thrown around so much, and I think it should be. It should be more of a conversation. It is becoming more of a conversation, which I appreciate, but I think when we say it, I think there's like this image in our head of like the way a brand is marketing their stuff on a shelf, when there's like so much more to it, and I thought it was good to make it more tangible, to understand what greenwashing can look like to go through those with you, give you examples. Okay, Shelby, but why is greenwashing a problem? It sounds like most of these brands are at least trying to do something. Shouldn't we give them like kudos and props and be okay with them at least doing something? And let me just tell you, that mentality is the first thing I think is wrong with greenwashing. I think this like notion that these brands can do these smallest things and like it's good enough because at least they're doing something, it's not good enough. I'm just gonna speak to you from my like very, some would say radical point of view, but we don't have time for the small stuff. We don't have time for the bullshit. I don't have the money to give to brands who are lying or fibbing or doing the smallest thing. We need serious, quick changes in this world to get us to a point where we are not facing a catastrophe. I don't believe they deserve the credit for doing, you know, like the bare minimum, because there are people out there doing things actually sustainably, actually ethically. I think it's not fair for the people who are doing the bare minimum to get credit for it when there are people out there actually trailblazing, leading the way, and doing the work. And yeah, like I said, lulls us into this sense that like, good enough, and it's not good enough. And then the other problem is, specifically when we talk about giving our money to people, some surveys have found, one in particular has found, that 80% of consumers say that the way a brand considers or takes responsibility for, or their sustainability like stance, impacts their purchasing decision. And 60% of consumers from one survey said that they would spend more money when a brand is sustainable, for more sustainable packaging, more sustainable things overall. So with those things in mind, and when you think about the fact that brands are getting away with saying and doing certain things, and then they're putting the higher price tag on it because people are willing to pay to vote with their dollars for bettering the planet, well, that's a problem for me. That's like a serious issue. I don't like manipulation. I don't like the lying. I don't like the false sense of progress that we have lulled ourselves into with just marketing tricks. That's why I hate greenwashing. Because the other impacts also are that by using these words and not really doing much, those brands that I talked about that are leading edge, that are doing the work, then it's kind of stealing their market share. And these huge brands, as I talked about in one of my recent videos, they really just killing small businesses in so many, it's again, whole video about it. Go watch it. I think it was good. Okay, Shelby, if greenwashing is as bad as you're saying it is, why does it exist? Why isn't something being done about it? Isn't false advertising illegal? Like why is this allowed? Well, the answer is because all of these claims are pretty nuanced. What sustainability is pretty nuanced. We all know I love nuance. I hate black and white thinking, but that makes regulations very hard. You being able to use the word sustainable is something that's not legally defined, so you can't really sue someone for it. There's no regulatory body that's going to come down on you for using that word. Worst case scenario, we see people suing people for using certain words to market certain things, and there are a few cases that we'll get to in just a minute, but that is the answer as to why greenwashing is allowed, is because it's really hard to regulate terms like planet friendly. Who determines what you need to be doing to use that claim? And also because it can be used across so many different verticals, right? Even if we were to define what the word planet friendly means, it would mean something very different for a shampoo brand versus what that word would need to mean for a vehicle. Okay, now we know what greenwashing is, what's wrong with it. Let's talk about the most hopeful legislation to exist around banning greenwashing. And of course, it's coming out of the EU. They always seem to be leaps and bounds ahead of us here in the US. But the positive thing is that these regulations have the ability to impact the entire world, because a lot of these huge, awful companies operate all across the globe. So if they're changing something about their business model because of the EU, because they want to keep their market hold in the EU, it has the likelihood to change things all around the world. So let's talk about the EU trying to ban greenwashing. One EU survey in 2020 found that 53% of environmental product claims were vague, misleading, or unfounded. Nearly half of environmental claims are false or unfounded. Take that in. Half of the things you see on the shelves, just bullshit, Just bullshit. More than 200 eco labels are currently used in the EU, relying on different methodologies, and a commission survey found that half of the label verification procedures were either weak or absent. So part of the legislation that's been introduced obligates firms to substantiate green claims using a standardized product lifecycle analysis that covers all environmental impacts with important data, including certificate of conformity, available to the public via QR code or web link. Look, me and the EU are on the same page. So 2 things here. 1, I love supply chain analysis. I think it's so important to talk about not only the product's end of life, which is what the zero waste movement largely focused on, the waste that comes from the things that we buy, and I think that sustainability, true sustainability, is about a lot more than that, and I would argue personally that the sourcing of anything is more important than the way it is disposed of. I will always advocate for that. So hearing them talk about supply chain kind of makes me tingle a little bit. And the other thing is requiring more information to be on your website and able to be accessed via QR code when you're making these claims. But it just makes sense. It's 2023. What I'm about to tell you is gonna blow your mind. I mean, it blew my mind, so tell me what you think. 68% of executives in the United States believe their company greenwashes. The survey, which involved 1,491 executives globally, including CEOs and C-suite leaders from various industries, found that 58% admitted their companies were guilty of greenwashing. This rate was higher in the US, where the 68% of leaders acknowledged greenwashing practices. Nearly 70% of people know that the claims they're saying are not substantiated well enough. Whenever this came out, it was not publicized anywhere near enough because I only found it during my research for this video, and that is some mind-blowing shit. I don't know. Maybe am I playing it up too much? After they admit that 70% of them say that they think that their claims are not well substantiated enough, 93% of them were willing to tie their compensation to their environmental, social, and governance goals. So the ESG ratings we were talking about earlier that are not well regulated enough, that are vague, that are essentially greenwashing, and then 70% of them say that their claims can't be substantiated, and then 93% of them say, yeah, but like we're getting away with it, so I'm totally willing to tie my compensation to the success of our greenwashing.
What, like it's hard? Oh my gosh, Warner, it's gonna be so great.
It's insane. It's so insane. And I think that specifically what they're saying here is that a lot of it is tied to US specifically executives. And I think they know because they own our government. I talked about that recently as well. We need to repeal the Citizens United decision because currently the corporations with over 500 employees own our government. So of course they're willing to tie their compensation to their ESG ratings because as of right now, the US doesn't care to crack down on those things. So they get to keep doing what they're doing. That's what this survey said to me. That was my takeaway. So as a result of all of this, the FTC is gearing up to set up their green guidelines, which obviously right now are just simply nearly non-existent. But I think you're understanding what greenwashing is, why it's problematic, why it's hard to regulate, and then we're understanding a little bit more about how we are trying to achieve better regulations in this space, and so on and so forth. So let's get to the thing that you want to know. Okay, how do I feel about this ad put up by Kim Kardashian first? Do we need to watch it? Do we need to watch the whole thing? Okay, let's play it.
The Earth's temperature is getting hotter and hotter. The sea levels are rising. The ice sheets are shrinking. And I'm not a scientist, but I do believe everyone can use their skill set to do their part. That's why I'm introducing a brand new bra with a built-in nipple. So no matter how hot it is, you'll always look cold. Some days are hard, but these nipples are harder. And unlike the icebergs, these aren't going anywhere.
Okay, before I say anything, it has to be acknowledged that there is no way in hell her and her team did not know exactly what they were doing when they did this. They know that this is going to cause people to talk about it. They know that using an issue as serious as climate change and making it a joke is going to get people upset. What's frustrating is every time I turn around and try to give Kim credit for like the important things she's doing in terms of like criminal justice, and then she just, has to go and fuck up again. I feel a little bit bad because I think I'm feeding into a little bit of exactly what her goal was by doing this, but it doesn't make it any less disgusting and disturbing and ethically wrong to make a joke out of something so serious. So I'm gonna talk about it anyway. There's a lot of conflation about opinions happening in the world right now where if you stand up against one thing, you're ignoring or you just like don't care about the other thing. I think bras like this existing for anybody who feels empowered by them. These products have a right to exist, and I think that that's good. I just think we could have like stuck to that messaging instead of making fun of something this serious. They have the worst rating possible from Good On You, which is an organization, a website that looks into brands and then ranks them according to their sustainability. And the problem with Skims is they don't even have enough information to like make any sort of analysis of them. Their transparency level is on the floor. And so while marketing to the people who care about these things and using climate change in that marketing, it kind of just, I think on a surface, shallow level, tricks people into thinking that, well, Kim Kardashian acknowledges climate change, and I care about that. I think that that is happening quite a bit. I mean, undeniably, right? It's one of her largest launch days ever. This bra is actually made of 100% synthetic materials, which are derived from petroleum, which come from oil, which oil causes climate change. The most frustrating part of this is using fossil fuels to make the bra, contributing further to climate change, and then making a joke about how climate change is coming and it's going to make things warmer, but you can always look cold if you wear this bra. Is that connecting when I say it? And I think ignoring that you, Kim Kardashian, are already a billionaire and you didn't really need to use one of the most serious, most pressing, most dangerous issues of our life as a joke in your marketing to further enrich yourself. All right, I have so many thoughts on this as I start talking, but it is I don't want to cry. It's really insulting to those of us who have spent so much time, energy, effort, money, trying to get more people to take climate change seriously, specifically people in power, specifically people who are wealthy, specifically corporations, specifically governments. It's very insulting to those of us who spend our lives fighting to make this planet a better place to then turn around and watch someone who doesn't need any more money use our work as a joke to profit from. I think it makes a mockery out of not just to make this about me, like the activism for me, it also makes a joke out of frontline communities who are already being impacted by the climate crisis. The last update from NOAA reported that in 2021, the United States experienced a record-tying number of 20 weather and climate disaster events with losses exceeding $1 billion each. The cumulative of these events was over $145 billion. These disasters include cold waves, wildfires, floods, droughts, and severe hurricanes and tropical storms. So you take all of that, you take the people who have lost their lives, lost their homes, lost their communities, the atrocities that individual, regular, everyday people are experiencing because of the climate crisis, the work that so many Black, Indigenous, and people of color, as well as every other climate activist in the world, all the work that we have done, and you minimize it to a joke to sell fossil fuel made products while exploiting the people in your supply chain to make a profit. That's all you did. I don't want to cry. Like, frontline communities are literally dying from the climate crisis caused by people like the Kardashians who have 600 times the carbon footprint of the average American, who already have one of the highest per capita carbon footprints in the world. The climate crisis is because of people like you. And then you undermine all of those things, the incredible humanitarian issues surrounding climate change, the environmental issues, the species loss, the people who have worked tirelessly to fight against the narratives that it's not real and that it's not serious, and you turn it into a joke. I think it's fucked up. I've never supported the Kardashians. I don't think we need more smart business people unless you're gonna do good, and you're simply not. Part of the commercial is also talking about how we can all use our abilities to do our part, but like as a billionaire, your part, the least bit of your part would be making this bra in a sustainable way, in an ethical way, and instead of doing your actual part to do the actual good that you and your strengths could have done. Your strength here is creating a bra to make you look cold even as people are dying from climate change. That's your using your skills to do your part. Wow. I genuinely did not know that I was this angry. But I will say that another insulting part of this, and this is like just kind of a side note, but she is donating 10% of the proceeds from these sales to 1% for the planet. And I think 1% for the planet is a good existing initiative. I don't know what you would call it exactly, but I think it's good to exist for people who don't know a lot about how to be more sustainable as a business. It's like a good starting point to dip your toe in. I'm side-eyeing the 10% from this thing because she also could have used this launch to say Skims is now part of 1% for the planet. And that would have had a real impact. Would I still call that greenwashing? Yes, but I would acknowledge that she actually was doing something. The people like Kim Kardashian and the Kardashians and billionaires and people with wealth, money, and power, they don't live the same lives that we do because they have the money and the ability to move whenever they want. They can go buy a new house. They're not connected to their communities because their communities are so different than the average everyday person that they just can't imagine, they can't connect with what it's like to exist as an average person. And that's how you end up with people who make jokes about it. Don't put money in the pockets of people who do shit like this. Don't watch their stuff. Don't follow them. Not specifically the Kardashians, but like any large multinational billion-dollar company, like just money in the pockets of the people who own them and operate them if you have the privilege to do so. And chances are if you're watching this, you are someone who has the privilege to do so. Yeah, also join an organization where you live. I don't want to leave this video off on such doom and gloom because, to be honest, again, I didn't realize I was this mad about it because I've been surrounded by such incredible environmental activists the last few months. I've made so many incredible friends and connections and gone to community events where I am reminded that people are doing the work, people are doing their actual part. But I also know that it's important to be aware of what's happening in the world because as much as like I'm able to find pockets of hope and good, we're still not seeing change on a massive scale like we need. And people with platforms like Kim Kardashian, I think, have more of a duty to do more. They do. They have a duty as people who have exploited our people and our planet in the most extreme ways. They have a duty to also give back to it. But that's my personal philosophy. So I'm going to leave you off with the positive message of do your best and advocate for the rest. And I'm so excited to read your comments on this video. But yeah, thanks for watching.